Welcome back to Redefine Healthy Radio, the new format where Laurin does not wear makeup. Why don't you wear makeup today, Laurin?
I'm going to kill you.
You have such a face for podcasting.
I know I do, which is why we podcast. And normally don't video, but Paul decided to start videoing us without telling me. So,
well,
awesome.
This is the first of our, our series that we're going to be putting on YouTube. We're going to add the video. We're getting a new podcast studio in the near future. So we're just testing the waters.
Just ramping it up.
So if you're interested and you're listening to this episode and you're like, I really wonder what it looks like in person, there's a YouTube channel for Redefine Healthy Radio.
Yeah, it's great. There's curtains behind us that aren't ironed, so they're really wrinkly. I did not put those up, and
well, it used to be just a wall.
Paul continues to think that they'll just shake out but there's
well, it's really humid in Florida. Doesn't that count for something?
No, there's still wrinkles.
Help us get. Your boyfriend put his balls on my stomach, and it's making me have to go to the bathroom.
It's a good start off.
Make it through this. What is this thing called, Ryan? Ryan's here.
Breath belt.
So I'm wearing Ryan's breath belt. It's helping me breathe better, more sympathetic.
Parasympathetic.
No, I want to be more sympathetic to my friends. It's helping me understand how it feels to be fat. I don't know.
Okay, no. The breath belt is awesome, though.
So what topic did we land on for this?
So we have a few, but the first one we're going to do is, I did like a little question boxing the other day, and sometimes you do those and I feel like the questions are like, but I got a lot of really, really good questions this time. So one of them was, what are your thoughts on using a ketogenic diet for dieting?
Yeah.
So we do get this question a lot. I mean, not obviously as much as some people because we don't necessarily talk about keto all the time, but it is something that I do use for a select handful of my clients.
Give me a percentage based. Out of 100 clients, how many think you have doing keto?
One or two.
I was going to say the same thing. I'm the same thing. Okay.
Very small. But the people that it works for, it works really great.
Well, so here's what I would be interested in, because I started adopting this last year when I had a couple people that I was like, something just seems wrong. Like, we're working really hard, nothing's happening. Let's try this. And got really good results. So what is what do you look at and go, okay, maybe we should try keto?
Mm-hmm. So typically as people age, they just don't handle carbohydrates as well. First of all, there are a sector of clients that do not handle carbs as well as fats, right? Like there are just, but I wouldn't necessarily call those clients keto, right? Like I don't put them on true keto. I might just put them on more of like a modified low carb diet, right? At any point when you're dieting, it ends up being low carb pretty much.
Yeah.
But I would say that for some people, even in the beginning of a diet, I'm more preferential to lower carb, a little bit higher fat. Mm-hmm. But as far as keto, as we age, some people just don't metabolize carbs as well. So for my one client, she's over 50. So I've found that it works a lot better for her and she feels really good too. So there's some people who have, as far as like how their body responds, physically what they look like, but also like mentally how they feel.
Yeah.
And the types of foods, she enjoys those. They work really well for her and it works really well for her job. Like she's a nurse and she's extremely busy. So there's a lot of factors that work for her. And then every time we've done this, it works really well and she just starts dropping.
So let's explain, because a lot of people listening to this might not actually know what keto is, because the word gets thrown around a lot. I remember Dave Palumbo used to throw around the word keto, and then I'd look at the approach, and it wasn't actually keto. It was just super low carb, high protein.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, I'm assuming you're talking about Rose.
Yes.
Yeah, so she won her pro card. So obviously she had success. So let's talk about her.
We're doing it right now.
Just macros type of thing. Like, what's a macro?
So
because this is interesting for a lot of people. They don't really know what keto is.
Yeah. So I will say, there's obviously different. Keto is defined as low carb, high fat, moderate protein, right? And then if you look at some people, as far as like a clinical setting, like if somebody has seizures, that's going to be a very different percentage than somebody who's, let's say, doing bodybuilding,
sure,
right? And from all the keto people that I've talked with and just seen it kind of in practice, people who do train a lot more and have more muscle mass can handle more protein and still feel like they're in ketosis. Yes. So for Rose, and for other people that I've done keto, like true keto that I'm calling it with, they're typically around still a gram of protein per pound. Now, I don't, I have other clients that are higher than that, so I don't put them, that's going to be like the top end, kind of.
Are you testing their ketones?
No, because, there's kind of like back and forth whether there's some validity issues there. But really, for me, it's more of like a how do they feel? Because, again, I'm not trying to reach clinical levels of ketosis. Like,
I'll be honest, I'm so new to coaching this way that I actually have them test their ketones.
And that's fine.
Because I'll message Andrew or Dom and be like, hey, how do I approach this?
Yeah. Well, some
issue?
people produce ketones differently also, right? So there's some people who, so that's going to be a whole different category.
That's the great thing about Andrew and Dom. They're never black and white on anything.
No.
They're like, this could be this, or this could be that. And so they're like, just try to get in this range. And so that's helpful.
So for the clients that I've worked with who are doing a keto diet, it typically goes more based on feel, like when we know that they're in ketosis.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm looking at.
So explain those feelings, because I know them, but I want to make sure everyone understands what the feelings are.
Yeah, so there is like a mental clarity that a lot of people who do a ketogenic diet talk about. So typically hunger is a little bit suppressed. You don't have these up and down energy levels. That's really the big thing when people are switching from a carb-based diet to a fat-based diet. When you are running on glucose for fuel, you do have inevitable spikes.
Yep.
And that's just the way that our bodies work when they're handling glucose. When you are using ketones for fuel, typically things are just a lot more stable.
Blood sugar is much more stable.
Yeah, everything is just stable in general.
And thus hunger is much more stable.
Yeah, hunger, mood, energy, all of that is pretty much like, wow, like the fog has been lifted and I feel good, even when they're in lower calories.
So now everyone's going, well, why doesn't everyone do keto?
Well, it is, pretty challenging as far as the food choices. But again, some people really like that. When one of my coaches, Laurin, was doing it, she's eating these things that she would tell me. And I was like, sounds like the most repulsive meal.
Sardines with butter.
Like, I was like, you couldn't pay me to eat that, but she enjoyed it, right? So there's going to be different people now. And there's also a difference too. Like Laurin was not dieting and Rose is. So for Rose, her protein's at a gram per pound, but her calories are still low. So her carbs are still fairly low. Like we keep them typically right now we're at 50, which is not, some people even who are not doing keto are going to have to get to 50 carbs, but their fat's going to be a lot lower, right? And then her fats are about 75 right now. So she's still low calorie because she's a smaller person, she's older, and we do have to be more aggressive with her.
Yeah.
So, but now like when Laurin was doing keto, it was more of like we did it a little bit differently. Yeah, blonde.
Okay.
So we had, again, protein kind of set, and then we had like, we weren't tracking to the T because it was like part of our experiment of not doing that. Mm-hmm. So basically she had like a protein threshold to hit and not really go above. And then she also had a carb threshold to not go above. But it was kind of like unlimited fat sources. So she was in a different position because she was eating more calories. So it can work both ways, but really you have to like the foods that you're eating. So just as kind of a baseline thing, most people would say if you talk to them about keto, they would be saying, hey, keep it under 50 grams of carbs.
Yep.
And then, protein can kind of vary, but I would say probably no more than a gram per pound, roughly. And then, if somebody's training, and then, fats can kind of be the rest of those calories. So if somebody doesn't have a lot of calories, they're not going to have as much fat. But if they are in an off-season period, they can get over 100 grams of fat plus, but might be eating 30 grams of carbs. So it's really just going to depend. And those are all carbs. That's vegetable, that's everything. Yeah. That's all tracked
and you
carbs.
Really, ideally, from what I understand, you should be taking in carbs that do not spike blood sugar to any degree. You should be trying to keep that very minimal.
Rose pretty much
which means pre-workout carbs for the most part.
Yeah. Carbs, the harder carbs are going to be around training. She pretty much eats kind of like a paleo style keto diet is really what she does. And the people that I've seen the most success with typically do that. And when Laurin was doing it as well, she was eating pretty much all whole foods, like none of maybe like the occasional like keto snack, well, but that's not the one
thing that Dom
primary.
Often talks about is how your taste buds kind of change and you just start to crave foods differently and feel differently. And so that could be another interesting benefit is that people think, man, I like these foods. And
if you like that food, it might help you, right? And likewise, there's a lot of people who, particularly a lot of women who do not like a lot of fat, right? Like I've noticed a lot, especially, like some, like my mom or just other people like, oh, I just do not like fatty foods. And they like carbs better, right? So it's going to be something that's going to depend on the person.
Well, there's another difference too between a high carb or a carb dieter versus a keto dieter, and that's typically going to be like muscle fullness, getting refeeds, kind of performance in the gym tends to be better. Mm-hmm. Most of my clients that have tried keto have been like, nope, don't like it.
So some people really thrive, and like I said, like Rose thrives on it. And actually Blonde did great with it too, and she does more of a CrossFit style type training. And we just had to be really careful with her electrolytes and just kind of sodium in general and her hydration, because that is something that can be more easily depleted in a keto diet. So for her, like that was really helpful. She did use exogenous ketones as well when she was training. Rose isn't doing that at this point, but so there are different ways that you can handle it. And then when Rose does get leaner, we do add in refeeds, but they are very specific. It's like, hey, use these 2 carb sources, pre and post workout, GDAs, like at 3 meals, et cetera, et cetera. And then she handles them really well. But I have to get her to that point.
So you do something similar to that before stage to kind of add in a
to
few
test
real safe carb sources to help her fill out a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll do that even for the peak, because that was actually one of the hardest things, was kind of like, hey, how do I peak somebody? Because how we peak people is very different.
Right.
It's, hey, we're bringing the carbs up typically we're bringing carbs up almost daily. And so I actually consulted with Gorman about this, because he's used keto a lot with athletes. So basically it was kind of like, hey, beforehand, which is kind of what I had thought, and, test a refeed, see how she looks, X days afterwards, and then kind of implement it that way. So the last, I believe when she won her pro card, we did actually 2 refeeds in that week. Like we did one a little bit earlier, tapered it down again, and then hit it the day before stage, and then it was like ready. And then the day of the stage, though, we pretty much just had exclusively carbs and fats.
Right.
I mean, fats and protein, sorry.
And so it's also glycogen sparing when you're in ketosis. So your muscles are going to be a little bit more resilient.
Yeah. So there and it's going to be case by case dependent. I don't think that it's a magic bullet for everybody, but for some clients it really, really works.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to use it, but just be aware of some of the downsides and learn how to manage it.
Well, and so the one thing that I look for is when I have to get people close to that 50-gram carb mark just to lose weight, it's like, okay, why not just switch to this model? And that's really over the last couple of years what I've been doing, and they just feel better. So even though they're on a low carb approach, I'm not doing the 1 gram per protein. I'm doing the more 80-20 model. I'm doing the 80% fat, at least until we get them through that transition phase. Because once you've been adapted to keto for a while, then you can actually do things like bring up the protein a little bit. Yeah,
both of them handled it really well, because I think they've both been on a higher protein diet for a while.
Yeah.
So I think it's just going to depend kind of on your metabolism. And
did
likewise,
either of them complain about the keto flu or the temporary day or two where they just kind of felt like icky?
Yeah, a few days, but both of them kind of handled it really well also.
Well, we're used to feeling icky in prep.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I kind of feel like shit anyway. But something that I did pick up when I had been to several of those keto conferences as well is that likewise there's some people who handle more protein and can still be in ketosis.
Yeah.
There were also some people who could handle more carbs and be in ketosis.
Yeah.
So it's just going to depend on the individual, of course, and what the goals are. But if you are trying to use a keto style approach for bodybuilding, I would say that having protein as high as possible to still be in keto or still feel like you're in keto is important. And then, prioritizing carbs around training, like the few carbs that you do have, and then making sure that you are having enough electrolytes and salt and fluid.
That's one of the big things about the fasting approaches is that people have to make sure they're taking in like electrolytes, because you do lose a lot of your minerals and stuff by fasting for long periods of time. So, I mean, that's one way you can get into ketosis faster, is just fast for a couple of days and your body will switch to ketosis. So the nutritional ketosis approach where you do high fat, it's very important at the beginning to just get that switch over done, because you don't want to be in that middle phase. Yeah, no,
that's kind of like the awkward. And that's where actually a lot of people end up
quitting.
Yeah, quitting. But even just in general, like in our normal dieting approach, which is just low calorie, like at the end of a prep, you're kind of oscillating between using glucose and using ketones, which is kind of part of why you feel trashy. But at some point it's like, that's just kind of the reality of prep. Funny. You still need carbs. If you're a carb-based athlete, even if you're getting just a little bit more, that's still going to help your performance. And I would still say I'd rather somebody oscillate between those two and use carbs, because it's going to help their physique. But for some clients, it's not going to be as beneficial.
So years ago, I think the year I met you at the camp when Dom presented, and I told him some of my symptoms of prep, he actually thought I was going in and out of ketosis on 200 grams of carbs a day, because I was doing HIIT cardio, I was weight training, and he's like, yeah, you're having the symptoms. Because I told him I would have refeeds and then I would just feel terrible 2 days later. And then a couple days later, I'd mental clarity and I'd feel good. But I was on 200 grams of carbs, so I just never made the association.
But for you, that's low and you're doing a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? So it's just all
especially with
relative.
the HIIT cardio. I mean, I was just probably burning through that as I was eating it.
There's people, a lot of the guys up at First Form do like triathletes and stuff. And then they also, a lot of them will use kind of a more keto approach, like keto-based diet, but they'll still use carbs for performance. So there's one guy who, he's younger and is in good shape and whatever, but he was on like 150 grams of carbs, but like still in keto, because of like he was using the carbs only at certain times. He was still high fat, you know what I mean? So it just kind of depends on the person. And of course, that's going to be a situation where he's a male who's a little bit more muscular and, is doing a lot of training and a lot of stuff. But you can, the number is just it's going to depend on different people. If you're sedentary, don't expect to eat 100 grams of carbs and be in ketosis.
No, and I'm still learning about it, and I'm very open-minded to taking different approaches, and I'm always looking at like, okay, where can this this approach apply.
I just find it really helpful with a lot of the Masters competitors.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
kind
and
of
that's
what I've
something that
seen.
actually Dom talks about a lot, is that as we age, our carbohydrate metabolism gets worse. And so,
Yeah.
you know, as we age, it might actually help in things like that really matter, like disease prevention and stuff like that. So,
Well, yeah, that's a whole different conversation. I
Yeah.
mean, most people do not need many carbohydrates because they're not doing anything.
well, just the whole Alzheimer's conversation where, you know, they had basically people that were Alzheimer's patients switched to a ketogenic diet and their mental clarity improved.
Well, that's-
because the glucose engine was kind of what was no longer functioning for them. So now ketones were helping their brains work. Like that's not bodybuilding. That's like
No, that's
life
real-
stuff.
yeah.
That's real world application. That's what Dom studies. So for anyone that's like, why doesn't Dom prep people? Like he's actually like curing cancer.
Yeah,
and
doing real
diseases
important
and-
things.
But it's just before Dom spoke about it at Lane's camp that year, it was something I'd never even like heard
Thought
about.
of.
I mean, I think we all watched that presentation and we all were like, "Oh my god!" Like what is this stuff?
And now keto is very mainstream, but
Yeah.
you know, people are like, "Oh, this banana is keto," and you're like, "No," you know what I mean? Like, hey, that's like really wrong.
Keto banana.
Or now it's, you know, kind of becoming the marketing tactic, which of course, like I understand, like, you know, people got to make money, but the way that people have marketed stuff, like even, I mean, we were one time like at Costco and there was just like all these different like powders and it was like keto collagen coconut powder. I'm like, oh my God. And like people are
Putting keto friendly on stuff.
are buying it and I'm like, I'm going to just bet this person has no idea
Right.
what they actually need to be doing for
Well, there
a better
are some
diet.
companies
you know what I mean?
now that are like, the difficulty with keto probably 5 years ago and beyond was it's very difficult to kind of find foods that you enjoy for most people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now these companies are, I mean, there's even things like keto muffins and keto pizza and
But here's the thing, I'll
Legendary
still-
Foods just sent me some keto Pop-Tarts.
I'll still say with all that though, like, you know, there's a difference of carbs and net carbs, and you'll see a lot of stuff marketed with net carbs.
Yeah.
And in my true opinion, as you know, coaching people, you still need to track all those carbs, and they all do add up. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you're having 3 keto snacks a day, guess where all your carbs went? You know what I mean? So
Well,
it's
the
way
term
lower.
net carbs was for diabetics that are worried about their impact on their blood sugar. And
Yeah.
then they took that and turned it into like, hey, it's only 4 net carbs, but 38 total. Like,
Yeah,
well, hold
you're
on
like,
here.
hey, okay, so now, does it affect you less? Of course,
Right.
but it's still going to, especially if we're talking about the bodybuilding conversation, that all still adds up. So
Yeah.
I think that all of that is really, really great, and I'm super excited about that because those Pop-Tarts are legit.
Oh, I haven't opened them yet. They're here.
We tried it. I tried like a bite at the Fit Expo, and it was really, really good.
Oh,
I was
awesome.
blown away. I
I
was
have to
like,
go get them now.
this
They're in my office.
yeah. Well, this actually tastes like a real Pop-Tart. But, you know, I just want people to be careful with that they're not just basically eating stuff like that and then eating the regular food too. Like just
Right,
because you're
right,
eating a keto
Because
Pop-Tart
that's healthy. 'Cause it's
doesn't
keto.
mean that you can still eat all this other shit. And just to kind of loop
Well, I
back
think
with the...
that's general pop, though. They want to make one small change and assume that's going to just fix everything. Like they read the study
one
that
small change, like, go for a
glass
walk.
of wine makes you healthy. It's like, no, that's not the point. Don't just have a glass of wine and think, okay, I'm healthy now.
Yeah, I'd be the healthiest person around.
Super health.
But for just to loop back to the Alzheimer's thing. So yeah, basically there's a lot of dysregulation with, you know, with glucose metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
So ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier. So that's how you can actually function and have more mental clarity.
Yeah,
so that's
if
where
this
it's
is news to you and you know somebody with Alzheimer's, like, don't trust us. There's like some TED Talks. There's some amazing
a lot of
people, like
really great
doctors
stuff
that are
going
like,
on.
yeah.
But again, that's true ketosis, and that's actually, you know,
Yeah.
producing ketones, and that is a diet that a lot of people are not ready to commit to. It's not as easy as eating keto-friendly Pop-Tarts.
It's some ridiculous butter in your coffee and sardines for lunch type stuff. And
Yeah, and it's
bacon
a totally different
yeah.
way of eating, but some people really like it. And if you have a disease state, you know, it's kind of like, hey, you know, maybe like a serious disease
Oh, for
state,
sure.
you should
sure.
be. Now, I also get it though. When people are in a situation like that, typically they're a little bit older, a little bit set in their ways, and you know, it is hard to change how people eat. I mean,
well,
that's just the
especially
reality,
someone that's
but
having some issues like mentally.
Yeah.
They're not going to quite grasp these
they're not going to
concepts
grasp
of like,
it as well. And then also, you know, so say somebody has, you know, a glioblastoma, which is a brain tumor, a type of brain tumor, you know, it's very severe, and you're like, hey, this ketogenic diet might help, and people are like, I'm also being told I have 3 months to live. They're kind of like, I don't want to do this
Yeah.
stupid diet, you know. So it is kind of like a hard conversation to have, but there has been a lot of really great research that's being done, and they just had the yearly keto conference, MHS, so I'm sure
they
they have
changed
it.
it now to the Metabolic Health Summit because I think they didn't want it to become like keto only.
Yeah, so they had a lot of really great research, though, and so if you just go to that website, metabolichealthsummit.com, they'll have a ton of great resources there if you guys are interested. And then Dom's website, I believe, is ketonutrition.org. I could be wrong, but I think that's right.
Just look up Dr. Dominic D'Agostino. His Instagram is great. He's always testing his ketones after he eats foods, and he's deadlifting like 700 pounds for reps, and he's just a Adonis. Love you, Dom. All right, that's going to be it for the keto conversation, unless you guys are interested in hearing more, and maybe we could dig deeper into it.
Yeah,
all right,
let us
guys,
know.
Have a great afternoon. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.